Hey guys, welcome back to IM Movies. Today we're looking into the 2006 American action thriller film titled Smokin' Aces. But before we jump into the details, make sure to show us some love by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Now let's get right into it. The movie begins as FBI Special Agents Richard Messner and his partner Donald Carruthers carry out a surveillance on the house of Primo Sparazza, the last standing leader of a mafia connect known as La Cosa Nostra. At this time, the FBI is also working to turn a key witness against Primo, who goes by the name Buddy Aces Israel, a Las Vegas illusionist and five-time Las Vegas Showman of the Year who managed to find favor in the eyes of Carlotta's mafia family. However, Buddy Israel later decided to adopt the mob lifestyle for himself by running his own smash and grabs and then a couple of bank robberies, which shines a spotlight on the Carlotta crime family, causing everything to go sideways as federal agents clamp down on the mafia family. Now, as special FBI agents Richard and Messner tap into phone calls coming from Primo's residence, they overhear a phone conversation between Victor "Baby Buzz" Padic, a top capo in the mob, and Sidney Serna, Sparazza's underboss, scheming to take over the organization. During this conversation, Serna tells Padic that Primo is paying a sweet assassin $1 million to kill Buddy Israel and have his heart cut out. With this, Serna and Padic plot to employ their own assassins through a lady called Loretta to kidnap Buddy Israel in exchange for a $1 million ransom. As the investigation begins, the deputy director of the FBI, Stanley Locke, briefs Richard and Donald about Primo's history, revealing how he had skillfully managed to escape being connected to over 100 contract murders he'd committed, including the death of an FBI agent named Freeman Heller, who happens to be the first successful agent to infiltrate the Carlotta crime organization. Freeman had undergone a series of cosmetic surgeries to infiltrate the organization and managed to attain the rank of capo in the Carlotta crime family before getting killed by Primo after his cover got blown. Following this, Primo was then relocated to Nevada to head the Las Vegas faction of the Carlotta family called La Cosa Nostra. Being the big boss, Primo had given Buddy Israel his first big break as a showman and brought him up through the family ranks. However, an ambitious Buddy Israel connived with Primo's top lieutenants in an attempt to topple him, but only ended up splitting the La Cosa Nostra into two factions, one on his side and the other on Primo's side. The discord between the two factions drew the interest of several federal agencies who began to investigate the key members of the organization, with Buddy Israel being their main target. However, Buddy Israel managed to enter a witness protection deal with the FBI after getting arrested, offering to stand witness against Primo in court in exchange for immunity. Now, considering the $1 million bounty on Buddy Israel, Locke tells Special Agent Donald and Richard about potential assassins that might want to get involved in the bounty hunt. He mentions Pasquale Escoda, a Spanish blood money mercenary whose countrymen refer to as El Strago, which means the plague, due to his bizarre torture methods. Escoda is also deemed crazy because he once chewed off his fingertips just to avoid being ID'd by Interpol in Northern Ireland. Meanwhile, Jack Dupree, a bail bondsman, and his team members Deeks and Elmore gets hired by Rupert Reed, a man whose law firm had bailed Buddy Israel. Reed wants Jack to bring Buddy Israel back to him before he officially jumps bail and then forfeits the bond payment. Afterward, Jack tells Deeks and Elmore about the deadly Tremor brothers as one of the potential threats they might during the operation. The Tremor Brotherhood consists of Darwin, Jeeves, and Lester Tremor, the eldest. The Tremor brothers' careless and bizarre execution style had earned them a reputation, as they are once known to have killed 7 innocent people and left 28 wounded in a dinner club while going after one man. At the same time, Loretta meets with duo contract killers, Georgia Sykes and Sharice Waters, and presents them with a 6-figure deal to bring Buddy to her. However, Loretta also warns the girls about a potential threat known as Laszlo Soot, a legendary Hungarian hitman and master disguiser whose real identity is unknown. Back at the FBI briefing room, Locke tells Richard and Donald that if they lose Buddy Israel, then they will definitely lose their case against Primo, making Buddy Israel a top priority witness. Locke further reveals that Buddy Israel is currently lodged in a penthouse at Nomad Hotel and Casino in Lake Tahoe, Nevada. Meanwhile, at the penthouse, Buddy Israel recovers from a night of partying and asks one of his boys named Hugo Krupp if he has heard from Morris Mecklin, Israel's business manager and acting lawyer who is currently working to strike a deal for him with the FBI. Hugo sluggishly replies that he left a message for Mecklin, but he hasn't replied yet. Afterward, Buddy Israel asks him to get Vitoli, the hotel's head of maintenance, to come clean up the penthouse. At the same time, Jack and his team meet up with Reed and they take a down payment of $50,000 for their service. Back at the penthouse, Buddy Israel gets frustrated because he hasn't heard from Mecklin. Soon, he orders Ivy, his head of security, to get him another group of prostitutes since the ones he got the previous nights are now wasted. Shortly after, Ivy instructs Beanie, one of Buddy Israel's men, to get the drunk prostitutes out of the penthouse. However, one of the drunk prostitutes stumbles on a glass table and shatters it. A fight breaks out shortly after as the ladies curse themselves out, prompting the security guards to intervene. Meanwhile, Escoda arrives at the hotel disguised as an FBI agent and immediately requests to meet with the hotel's head of security. At the same time, Jack and his team also prepare to go into the hotel disguised as security men after acquiring a replica of their uniform. However, they soon get killed by the Tremor brothers, who suddenly open fire on them. Afterward, the Tremor brothers proceed to steal their belongings and then dispose of their bodies in a nearby lake. At the same time, Georgia and Charisse arrive at the hotel to book a room. Meanwhile, Soot has already gained access to the hotel's maintenance room, where he has killed Vitoli as he attempts to duplicate his face. However, Hugo, who had been trying to reach Vitoli, arrives and repeatedly knocks on the door of the maintenance room. After realizing that Hugo has a direct connection to the penthouse, Soot shoots him dead and proceeds to make a latex replica of his face. Meanwhile, Buddy Israel finally speaks to Mecklin, who reveals to him that the FBI is requesting that he give up his boys in order for them to finalize the deal. Although reluctant, Buddy Israel agrees to give up his boys after much thought, and the deal gets signed. However, Ivy, who had been eavesdropping, feels betrayed upon hearing this. Special agents Richard and Donald hear the news of the deal, and they quickly move to get hold of Buddy Israel at the penthouse before anyone else does. Meanwhile, Escoda, who had found his way into the security control room, inquires about the guest living in the penthouse from Bill, the head of security. However, Bill tells him that there is no one there, stating that there is an ongoing maintenance in the penthouse and his men are guarding the place. To further convince Escoda, Bill reveals that he is the only one who has a pass to the penthouse. However, as soon as Escoda learns this, he stabs Bill to death with a hidden weapon and then proceeds to take his uniform and security pass. At the same time, Special Agents Donald and Richard get reports about the bodies of Jack and Deeks found at the edge of the lake. Donald calls the hotel and orders a total lockdown, and then instructs Richard to go to the lake to gather more information about the incident, as he heads over to the hotel himself. Afterward, it is then revealed that Elmore had survived the Tremor brothers' attack and managed to escape, losing some of his fingers in the shootout. However, he manages to find his way to a house where he meets a young retard. Luckily for him, the young boy happens to be in the care of an old retired nurse who takes care of his wounds. Meanwhile, the Tremor brothers, disguised as security personnel, head over to the elevator as they make their way to the penthouse. At the same time, Georgia also arms herself to the teeth as she prepares to sneak into the penthouse with the new batch of prostitutes that Buddy Israel had ordered, while Charisse watches her back with a sniper rifle from a building just opposite the hotel. Meanwhile, Dr. Sven Ingstrom, the Swede, who is feared to be a mysterious assassin, arrives in Tahoe in a private jet. At the FBI headquarters, a document on Primo Sperazza's investigation gets delivered to Deputy Director Locke. After going through this document, Locke realizes that Freeman Heller is actually Primo Sperazza. With this, the agency cuts off its deal with Buddy Israel. However, Locke refuses to let Special Agents Donald and Richard know about the new development, even after one of the agents suggests it. Back at the hotel, Soot, who is now disguised as Hugo, walks past security into the penthouse. On getting in, Beanie confronts Soot about how he didn't get Vitoli to come clean up the penthouse, but Soot refuses to speak. Shortly after, Beanie begins to cuss at him, and he later shoots him dead. At the same time, Ivy confronts Buddy Israel about his earlier conversation, revealing that he knows that he's planning to hand them over to the FBI to save himself. Buddy Israel tries to convince Ivy that he didn't really mean to turn them in, but Ivy doesn't believe him. Down at the hotel's lobby, Special Agent Donald requests to meet with the head of security, and he gets directed to talk to Escoda, who happens to be heading for the elevator dressed in security uniform. Agent Donald gets into the elevator with Escoda, and they both head to the penthouse. At the lake crime scene, Agent Richard learns that Jack's car has been found at the hotel's parking structure, and he rushes over to investigate it. Meanwhile, Georgia begins to get impatient as she waits for the prostitutes to arrive. Soon, she decides to use the elevator, but as soon as the elevator door opens, she sees the Tremor brothers. Upon sighting her, they begin to make suggestive gestures at her. Seeing this, Georgia retreats from using the elevator and decides to wait. Meanwhile, Agent Donald loses signal in the elevator and asks Escoda to help him contact security with the elevator emergency line, but Escoda refuses, stating that the phones are only hardwired to maintenance. With this, Donald begins to get suspicious, and upon seeing Escoda's hands, he realizes who he really is. Donald pulls out his gun, and Escoda, also realizing that his cover has been blown immediately, proceeds to stab Donald in the hand, and they both open fire on each other in the elevator. At this point, the elevator gets shut down and they get stuck in it. The Tremor brothers also get stuck, but it appears that they came prepared as they begin to cut through the elevator door with a burner. Back at the penthouse, Ivy attempts to kill Buddy Israel for betraying him, but Buddy Israel manages to use his sharp ace card throwing skills to distract Ivy, and then escape into the bathtub as security guards troop in. Soon Ivy surrenders and he gets taken away, leaving Buddy Israel alone with Soot. On getting to the elevator, the security guards realize that all the elevators are down. Shortly after, they see smoke coming from one of the elevators, and Ivy, realizing the danger they are about to face, takes cover behind the guards. Meanwhile, Georgia notices that one of the elevators has stopped at her floor, and as she decides to forcefully open it, she finds Escoda and Donald dying inside. At the same time, Agent Richard arrives at the hotel and soon realizes that someone is posing as an FBI agent after hearing from one of the hotel staff who had spoken to both Escoda and Agent Donald. Soon, Agent Richard orders that the elevators get powered up, and he takes a team with him. At this time, Georgia reveals to Charisse over the comms that both men she found in the elevator are FBI agents, stating that one of them must be fake. However, Agent Richard overhears this through the comms and orders that they stop the elevator on the same floor where Georgia is. Georgia spots the agents as they take a position to attack, and she hides inside the elevator. Realizing that she's in a fix, Georgia tells Charisse to open fire on her count. Shortly after, Charisse opens fire on the place and shoots down the agents with her heavy-duty sniper rifle. As the shootout gets intense, Georgia gets shot in the stomach. Also, one of the prostitutes who just arrived at the scene gets shot dead. Richard tries to save Donald and also instructs that they seize the suspects. However, Georgia manages to escape using the elevator. At the same time, the Tremor brothers break out of the elevator and soon begin to take down the security guards using their bizarre methods. However, Ivy manages to shoot Lester and then proceeds to shoot Jeeves, who attempts to take revenge for his brother. Shortly after, Darwin Lester opens fire on Ivy, but he manages to escape. Meanwhile, Georgia and Charisse lose contact, causing Charisse to begin panicking. Soon she spots the body of the dead prostitute and angrily begins to open fire, thinking it's Georgia's. However, Georgia arrives at the penthouse floor and finds Darwin attempting to strike Ivy down with an axe, but she points her gun at him. Darwin manages to escape into the elevator and Georgia finds herself in Ivy's arms. Meanwhile, as Soot attempts to inject Buddy Israel, FBI agents break in and arrest him. At the same time, Ivy romantically carries Georgia to safety. However, they come across Agent Richard, who attempts to get them arrested, but Georgia points her gun at him and reveals to him that she had nothing to do with Donald's death. Richard believes her since he overheard her on the comms and decides to let them be. As soon as Agent Richard arrives at the penthouse, he confronts Locke, asking him what's going on. Locke tries to calm Agent Richard down, but he refuses to listen. At the same time, Dr. Sven reveals that Buddy Israel is having a cardiac arrest and requests that they move him to a hospital. Soot takes advantage of this moment and manages to escape into a room where he completely acts like a victim after removing his mask. Moments later, Darwin gets to the ground floor and uses Escoda's fake ID to get past the cops as Escoda gets taken into custody. At this time, Charisse uses her rifle scope to look for Georgia among the wounded, but she's left dumbfounded as she spots her in Ivy's arms. At the same time, police arrive at her location and gunshots can be heard. At the same time, Elmore confronts Darwin at the parking lot, but Darwin couldn't recognize him. Elmore reminds him of who he is and later shoots him down after pretending to let him off. Shortly after, Agent Richard arrives at the hospital where Buddy Israel is kept, and then pulls out his gun as he threatens to kill Locke if he doesn't explain what's going on. With this, Locke takes Agent Richard to the operation room, where he finds Buddy Israel and Primo Speranza lying side by side. At this point, Locke reveals to Agent Richard that Buddy Israel and Primo are father and son, stating that Primo had Buddy Israel with a young prostitute, which explains why Primo had favored Buddy Israel all along. Locke further reveals that the Swede assassin they all talked about is not an assassin, but a Swedish surgeon who happens to be Dr. Sven. Since Primo and Buddy Israel are father and son, Dr. Sven was brought in to carry out a heart transplant for Primo Speranza. As Richard attempts to protest, Locke reveals to him that Primo Speranza is indeed Freeman Heller, revealing how he went deep cover 60 years ago, and how his valuable intel predates the Second World War. Feeling betrayed, Richard angrily vents about losing his partner in the operation. Regardless, Locke tells Richard that he can resign from the agency on the spot if he wishes to. With this, Richard agrees to remain calm and follow his order. Shortly after, Locke instructs Agent Richard to return to DC as soon as possible and make no further inquiry into the matter. Moments later, Richard gets left alone in the emergency room, and he gazes at Primo and Buddy Israel with disgust. After much thought, Special Agent Richard locks himself inside the operating room and proceeds to unplug the life support system of both Primo and Buddy Israel. Following this, he surrenders his weapons and badge and watches with a sense of fulfillment as other agents struggle to break the door open. At this point, Richard realizes that the cards have been dealt, as he puts an end to decades of dark secrets. And this is where our story ends. If you'd like to see us recap any other movies or topics you have in mind, just drop a comment and let us know. And don't forget to hit the like button, share this recap, and subscribe to stay updated for the next one. Until next time.